On this channel, Million Dollars Made Easy, we love to run numbers for people. And the reason we call it Million Dollars Made Easy, because I think if people see these numbers when they're first starting out and realize how little it takes to get to $1 million, they will be simply amazed. What I want to do is take somebody that's investing $150 a month, which that's just 3% of somebody making 60,000 today. Let's just carry this out and see where they might be. Now, after 10 years, what happens? We're going to go and update this. It's going to update it for every single year, $150 a month, using the returns to the S&P 500 for the last 100 years. Over that 10-year period, at $150 a month, they would have put in $18,000. And I want you to notice something. In the absolute worst case scenario, they'd have less than what they put in. That's why you don't want to look at 10-year returns or even 15-year returns. But if you're, say, 20, 25 years old and you have these kind of time frames out here, look at the different numbers. And we're just going to go through them here on this video. First, I want you to notice, if we just look at the 10-year graph, these are the numbers for 1924 going forward. Of course, nobody knows what's going to go forward, but we're just going to assume the returns are going to be somewhere within the range of what's happened in the last 100 years. Look how it started out. 5 good years, and then we had 4 down years. So you ended up with how much after 10 years? 19,151. Where's this 14,000 at? That's actually 1999. Let me show you the numbers. I like to go back to the Depression years, but I also like to remind people something like this just happened recently. If we look at the numbers for 1999, look at these numbers, folks, right here. Started out good, up 21, then down 3. Had some really good years, and then down 37. After 10 years of putting $150 a month in, you'd have $14,985. These are all approximations. But how much did you put in? You put in $18,000. But look at this. You only have $14,985 to show for it. The median in this column is 30,000, so that's quite a bit better than the 18,000. And in the best case scenario is 53,000. But let's go ahead and carry this out. This shows you, don't just look at a 10-year return, because you could end up with less than what you put in. But even a 15-year return, you could end up with a bad 15-year period. In this case, put in $27,000. And if we look at the year for 1960, which is where these numbers are coming from, it's calculating for every single year. And we're finding the number that's the least in this column, and that's 28,990. That's after 15 years. This is a summary box, by the way. You can go down through here, right here. You can see it's 28,990, or right here, just summarize it, because sometimes that way we don't scroll all the way down. 28,990. You put in $27,000 and you only have 28,990 after 15 years of investing this money. Again, don't look at 10 and 15-year returns. How about the 20-year return? 20-year return, putting in $36,000. In this case, the worst case scenario, you'd have 51,000. That was actually 1955, right here. 20-year period right there. After 20 years, you barely had any more than you had after 15 years. Why? Because we had some down years in there. So in other words, you've got to look at these long-term, being in it for the long term, because these numbers just start getting mind-boggling after a while. But not the first 10, 15, or 20 years. Let's look at the 25-year column. 45,000. Again, we're looking at the worst case scenario. We could be looking at the medians, but I just want to run the numbers for you. 25-year column, 105,910. What year was that? That was 1954, I believe. Let me see here if I got this right. 1954. Yeah, 105,910 after 25 years of investing this kind of money. You got about 2.5 times what you put in over that 25-year period, the median being 212,000. But I want you to look at the bumpy ride getting there. We're going up, and then all of a sudden you hit what? You hit some down years. What were you hitting in 1954? You were hitting the 1973, 74 down years right there. And that's what knocked it down. But I want you to keep watching this. As we go forward, you're going to see these numbers just get better and better and better between this ratio. Right now, it's about 2.5 to 1. This is about 4 to 1 when we go to the 30-year column. Even though you got the ups and downs, if you stay in it, compounding eventually takes over. because the market does come back if you're in it for the long term. In this case, you put in 54,000. Worst case scenario, 215,000. I've got the breakdown here for the 30-year column. 30% of the time you'd have over $500,000. That's color coded in green. Watch what happens when you go to the 35-year column. I love to catch people when they have 35, 40, and 45 years because that's when the numbers truly take off. You can see this chart right here. Again, this is 1954 numbers. What's the minimum for a 35-year period? 435,000. And I believe that was the year 1988. Let's look at 1988 numbers. After 35, yeah, 435,000. Every other scenario, you'd have more than that. How does it break down? 82% of the time, you have over $500,000. 9% of the time, you'd actually get to $1 million. Folks, we're talking about $150 a month, which is 3% of somebody making $60,000 a year. 3%. And if you can be in it for the long term, if we can catch people when they're young and let them show, okay, over that 35-year period, you put in 63,000. The worst case scenario would be 435,000. The median of this column is 608,000. The best case scenario is 1,400,000. What we do on this channel is we run numbers for people, and we've always used actual historical returns in this channel. We project ahead what similar returns might do for you in the future. There's no guarantee they're not going to be exact, but we come up with simply a possible range, and that's what we're seeing on this on these charts here, on these numbers. There's the range for a 35-year period. Somebody just putting $150 a month in could look forward to having anywhere between 435,000 and 1.4 million over the next 35 years. Just putting in 63,000 and getting about, what is that, 7 times that amount. But look at the 40-year count. Keep watching this graph down here. This is the graph for 1988, by the way. Look how it took off. And that's the worst case scenario, folks. Remember that. That's the worst case scenario. Here's the 40-year column. 40 years, put in 72,000. The worst case scenario, you'd have 10 times that amount, basically. Here's the graph. Here's where it's dropping down. It came back. What do we have? 100% of the time, you have $500,000. 69% of the time, you have $1 million. That's in the next 40 years if you just put $150 a month in, and 7% of the time you'd actually have 1.5 million. So if you're 25, 26, 27 years old and have 40 years till you reach your full Social Security retirement age, these are the kind of numbers you can look forward to after 40 years. Let's go one more time. If you're 20 years old, 21, 22, you're just getting started in your working career, you can save $150 a month. What does that look like after 45 years? Look at this. Look at these numbers, folks. This is just mind-boggling here. Again, we can't use 1988 because there hasn't been 45 years since 1988. I don't remember. Oh yeah, I ran these numbers. 1964 is the numbers we want to look at. 1964 gives us the worst case scenario for a 45-year period. With this scenario, there it is, $1.1 million. The median of this column is 1.85, and the max is 3.3 million. This is the breakdown. This is somebody putting $150 a month in, starting out maybe when they're 20, 21, 22, saving. If they're making 60, they'd be saving 3%. But say they're only making 30% of that. That's saving 6% of their income, $150 a month. The market continues to do what it's been doing for 100 years, through the good and bad, through the depression years, the good decades, the bad decades. Look at the kind of money. Worst case scenario, $1 million. Here's the actual breakdown. 100% of the time, you'd have $500,000. 100% of the time, you have over $1 million. That's color coded in blue. And look at this, 84% of the time, you'd have over $1.5 million, contributing just $150 a month. Now, everybody says, what about inflation? That's why we take into account inflation in this box right here. We assume a 3% inflation rate. Some people are saying I should run that higher. I can run whatever you want. What would the buying power of this 1.1 million be? You would be a millionaire. You'd have that in the bank, but it wouldn't have the same buying power as it does today. It had the buying power of 291,000. But again, you'd have $1 million in the bank. You would be a millionaire. It just wouldn't have the same buying power. So we always like to take into account inflation. But look, if we just do one other thing, all these numbers change. Unbelievable, because if you could just increase this $150 a month by just 3% a year, we're going to redo these numbers and look at these numbers then. This really helps. You're putting in more money, but these kind of ratios, when you're getting 10 to 1, that really helps with the inflation value of what you're going to have. Let's look at the 40 and 45-year column now. As soon as it recalculates, let's look at the 40-year column. 100% of the time, $500,000. 97% of the time, $1 million. 41% of the time, $15 million. The buying power of these numbers, the median, $1.4 million, to have the buying power of $433,000. The reason I bring these numbers up here is because I recently saw this right here. Today, the average American retiree had about $170,000 in the retirement savings. So yes, you would not have $1 million in buying power, but you'd have so much more than the average retiree today. This is the 40-year column. Let's go into the 45-year column. I realize I'm jumping all around here, but look at the 45-year column. 100% of the time you'd have over 500, 100% of the time over $1 million, 100% over time 1.5 million. Worst case scenario, 1.5 million with a buying power of $400,000. The median have the buying power of 654. Just think if we just doubled these numbers, folks. If you doubled these numbers, all these would be doubled. $300 a month. The buying power, this would be 3 million, and this would be the buying power of 800,000. So you'd be getting me. And folks, this is in the worst case scenario. We always run at the worst case scenario. So you put in $300 a month, increase that by 3% a year. These are the numbers you're kind of looking at. The absolute value of what you have, you'd have 3 million because you're twice that much. But the buying power, which is what everybody wants to look at, which is very important to look at, the inflation buying power of these numbers, you still have 800,000 in the worst case scenario. And in the median, you'd have well over $1.3 million in buying power. That's just $300 a month if we ran it that way. That would be 6% of somebody making $60,000 a year. But I just want to show people how little it takes to get to $1 million. Granted, that $1 million is not going to have the same buying power in these periods. But again, we're getting you nominally to $1 million. You would be a millionaire, wouldn't have the same buying power, but just like being a millionaire today isn't the same as being a millionaire back in 1988. But still, if you have $1 million today, you're feeling pretty good about yourself, even though it doesn't have the same buying power it had 35 years ago in 1988 or so along in there. But that's what we do on this channel. We run numbers for people. I just love doing that, showing how little it takes to get to $1 million. Yes, the million will not have the same buying power in these time periods. But again, get it in there and increase these. Increase it by 3, 4, 5% because the inflation also affects your wages. You can put in more. Again, what we do in this channel is run numbers for people. You want me to run them for you? Give me your beginning balance, your monthly contribution, whether you want to increase that each year. Like in this case, we increased $150 a month by 3%, and how long you want me to run it for. And as you can see, if you can give me in 35, 40, 45 years, the numbers are simply mind-boggling. Please consider subscribing, sharing, and liking these videos. Let people know about this channel, especially young people that have 35, 40, or 45 years. Let them see these numbers. Let them get started so the compounding effect right here can take off for them no matter what year I pick. Always is. I mean, look at this. This is 1955 numbers. Look at how it takes straight up. I just want young people to see these numbers that have 35, 40, and 45 years till retirement. Thanks for watching.